Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brent Woody, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with George Uehling. George is a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2023, and he is also the president of the Darden Outdoors Club. I recently connected with George to talk more about his background, how he decided to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden, how he spent his first year summer, as well as plans for the Darden Outdoors Club in the year ahead. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here's my interview with George Uehling. George, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. This is a great opportunity, so thank you.
Yeah, for our listeners, they don't know about what's in the background of people's screen views when we record these things. We record them via Zoom, and you got some bike tires, a couple bikes behind you. Is that something that you enjoy?
Yeah. So I am a huge cyclist. My office in my apartment here in Charlottesville is taken over with bicycles and all the associated parts that go with it. I have actually joined the UVA team as well. I spend some time cycling with them. Spent a lot of time with Darden folks, and I enjoy doing road cycling and some of the ultra endurance gravel races as well. There's plenty of opportunities in Charlottesville. It's a great place for all kinds of biking, and I've spent a lot of time in the surrounding area, and it's a great way to explore too. I feel like I have a really interesting perspective and a great way to see all the local towns.
Do you ever get out there on Skyline Drive? You occasionally see cyclists out there. Quite a lot of hill work, but nevertheless, some beautiful views.
I have. And when I moved here, I thought I'd be there more, given how iconic it is and how beautiful it is. But there's so much stuff right here. I don't actually have to drive out there. I can leave right from my house, get a lot of those same great views, a lot of those hills here in Charlottesville and right in the surrounding towns.
Well, great. I had to ask about the bikes because they're right in your view, and you got a couple in there. And well, thank you for sharing more about that. I'm sure we'll talk more about outdoor activities. A little bit of a spoiler alert for folks here. But tell us a little bit more about how things are going. How's everything?
Yeah, things are pretty great. So I am in the second quarter of my second year, so almost 75% done with Darden. It's gone faster than I expected, and it's great to be here. After spending the summer at my internship, coming back, it was so nice to see everybody. Have made a lot of really great friends and enjoying the time in Charlottesville with those people as much as I can before we all go our separate ways. I think it's a great time in Charlottesville. Mid to late fall, the weather's perfect. There's so much to do. I think we've just passed some of the peak fall colors, but it's been sunny and nice, cool mornings, warm afternoons, plenty of opportunity to get outside or sit in the courtyard right outside the Darden building.
Well, tell us a little bit more about who you are and your background before coming to Darden.
Sure. I studied mechanical engineering in undergrad. And at the time, I really thought that I wanted to build robots. That was the life goal, the career goal. And I, for a variety of reasons, decided to pursue something different after graduation and worked at a big consulting firm doing tech consulting, mostly related to the cloud. In the public sector, helping government agencies migrate onto AWS or some of those other big cloud providers. And it was a great experience. It was definitely the right move, and I enjoyed it, met a ton of great people, had the opportunity to move to Northern Virginia and spent a lot of time in a great area doing some really cool stuff. The future in professional services, it's great. There's a lot of opportunity. It was something that I felt pulled me further and further away from the actual technology and more into relationships and building clients and selling new work, which is absolutely necessary for any professional services firm. But I wanted to stay a little bit closer to the technology. I wanted to talk about client problems, and I loved understanding what they were going through. I loved talking to the engineers about how we could actually solve it. What was easy, what was hard, how much time it was going to take. And I started to look for a couple other jobs, and I realized that the jobs I really wanted required an MBA. So was looking for product management at a big tech company. Doesn't strictly require an MBA, but there is a path there, a well-worn path. And so I decided to pursue an MBA. And that's what I did this past summer, was work as a technical product manager at a big tech company. Enjoyed it. I'll be going back. And Darden has been a great stepping stone in that journey.
How did you originally get interested in robots or maybe technology generally? What was the initial spark for you?
Started middle school, probably. My school had a robotics program. We built Lego robots after school, and met a lot of good friends. We built some things that I really enjoyed. And it was just a ton of fun to hang out with your buddies after school and build something, figure it out, go through the process of understanding how this all works. And I saw mechanical engineering as a path to do that full time. And I wanted to use technology to automate something, right? I wanted to be able to find someone who had a problem and automate something away from their life so that they could go and do the other things they'd rather do. And I think that part of it is probably still consistent. I think that's a lot of what product managers talk about, is what can we build to improve our customer experience. But the actual day-to-day is a lot different than I envisioned when I was 12 years old.
Yeah, that's always interesting to hear how people get that initial spark. And it also sounds like along this journey, you did some soul searching around, well, there's this professional services path, or do I want to go more this technology path? How did you ultimately, were there any steps that you did to investigate that decision, or was it just one of these moments you had this moment of clarity where you're like, I'm getting pulled away from the thing I really want to do most here?
Yeah. My college internships were very engineering focused, building physical things. One of them I worked in manufacturing, improving processes. One of them I created some automated solutions to, whatever. I was physically building things. And towards the end of undergrad, I started to attend more and more career services events, and I just really liked the people at the consulting firms. They were closer to my age. They were living in a big city. It seemed more dynamic. Things moved pretty fast, and the clients and the projects changed. And at the time, I wasn't ready to say I want to work in this, whatever it would be, for a long time. And that's what happens in a lot of engineering is there's a lot of domain knowledge that gets built up for a long period of time, which is essential. But it means that a lot of people work on very similar things for a very long period of time. And I saw consulting as a way to try a lot of different things fast. And I did. And I never would have found the cloud domain without trying that. Things that I did truly end up enjoying and hope to stay involved with.
Well, I appreciate your sharing that. You mentioned coming to this realization that an MBA would be the right next step for you. How did you get interested in Darden specifically?
I had a couple criteria that narrowed down a long list of MBA programs. And for me, I wanted something that wasn't in a big city. As you know, we've talked about already, I'm very into the outdoors, and Charlottesville is very close to so much of that great outdoor experience, being so close to Shenandoah, the George Washington National Forest. And I wanted an MBA program that was on the smaller side. I went to a big undergrad, worked at a big company for big clients, and I wanted to try something that was a little bit different. And I wanted a general management focused MBA. Darden places people everywhere, pulls people from every industry all over the world. And it doesn't feel like it has one industry focus so much. Coming from engineering, working in tech consulting, going back to a tech company, I knew that I was going to have this one opportunity in my career to surround myself with people who were not just also in technology.
I'm curious about your point around wanting to do a general management MBA. How'd you come to that realization? Because it sometimes seems for folks who are on that tech path that they could pick something that's very tech focused or has a bit more of that flavor to it than say, oh, general management. How'd you come to that realization?
No, that's a good question. I think there's part of it was doing the same thing for a few years. And I felt like everybody I knew was doing the same thing. Everybody was living in Northern Virginia, working for a big tech consulting company, everybody of my friend group. And this was an opportunity to do something different than that. I felt like I was having a lot of the same conversations all the time. And I didn't really see that changing if I went to go work for a big tech company. And that was a personal and career motivated decision as well. I think from a personal perspective, it's really awesome to have friends who have come from backgrounds in international development and biotech and undergrad admissions and all of these other things that are so unrelated to what I was doing. And from a professional perspective, it's great too, because everybody came from something interesting and they're going to go do something interesting. It's a network that's broader than just tech.
I'm also curious, how did you think about the case method when you were a prospective student? As you might imagine, we get a number of questions from prospective students about the case method. What is it? Trying to wrap their heads around this learning experience. And so how did you think about it when you were doing your research?
It was something that added to the social side of Darden to me. I don't know if that's always the opinion that people have. Like I said, I was looking for the smaller schools, something that would have a strong community. And the case method incentivizes you to speak up in class, to support your learning team, and be a valuable member of the community. And going along the theme of finding different perspectives outside of just another tech consultant, it really, really opens that up. And I've been able to hear from a lot of people about their experiences doing things that I never would have expected. How does the Peace Corps compare to building infrastructure in Africa versus tech consulting? How would we solve these same problems? And understanding that different perspectives has been great. But then it also just encourages people to interact all the time. I mean, Darden is a very highly dynamic environment. There's people talking. The building is full. There are people having conversations in the hallways. And a lot of those people were on my learning team or in section C with me. And those relationships were built in part because we have to be prepared and speak during the case method, during the actual cases in class.
I appreciate that point about the implications of what the case method is as a learning experience, but the implications of it for your experience outside of the classroom too, right? You're building a lot of that connection in the classroom, and that obviously gets further built and explored through extracurricular activities and all the other social stuff that happens at Darden. You mentioned also being focused on, maybe a smaller school or in a college town, or thinking about potentially choosing not to be in a big city. I think that's also one of the things that has some say in the community here at Darden. This kind of layering that happens, your academic experience and social experience all being around the school.
Yeah, and it's definitely true at Darden. The Darden building is physically separated from the rest of grounds. Everybody lives in a couple apartment complexes that are right nearby. And I was reflecting on that just yesterday when I walked back from class. And I think I said hi to 5 or 10 different people in my 10-minute walk from the Darden building to my house. And I don't know when I'm ever going to have that high level of interaction, just walking from work to home and see so many friends so often. And everybody is part of the Darden community. it's pretty great. I think everybody wants to be here, wants to be at Darden. And it was COVID when I was going through the application process, but the reputation that I've heard from so many of the schools in the big cities is that that's different. People have different social lives. They've been there before. They just moved there. They live in different neighborhoods. Charlottesville is not like that. Everybody's part of the Darden community, and that was exactly what I was looking for.
So you come to Darden. You're a first-year student. There's a lot of adjustment that happens in that first year. What was that process like for you? We always try to share here on the podcast that everybody has learning curves, and everybody's kind of going through this process together, and has things to add and also things to learn. So what was your first year like?
Very different than work, that's for sure. It was not the corporate job anymore in so many ways. So I went to Darden before Darden, which is the 1 week-ish program where you get introduced to the case method, you meet a ton of people, and you go through a lot of the basic academic concepts that underpin your first year at Darden. And that was great. We were given a learning team, which was not our real learning team that we kept through the rest of the year, but those people are still some of my best friends, people that I'm going to talk to and hang out with on any given week. And it was nice. I remember thinking that it was really nice to be learning again and being hit with so many new concepts so fast was different than some parts of my job where I felt like I had gotten a little bit repetitive, a little bit stuck. And finance specifically was the first thing that stuck out to me as well. This is cool. I don't know any of this. This was never in any curriculum I had before. And it brings to light so many of the discussions around macro economy and things that people talk about all the time. And I started to feel like I had a better handle on what a lot of people were talking about. And my schedule changed too. So when you're working, you work during the week, have the weekends free mostly, but the schedule is a little bit more dynamic at Darden. Go to class in the morning, learning teams in the evenings. You have a free block in the afternoon that gets filled with something. Sunday nights are back to studying and prepping for cases for the next day. So the schedule is definitely different than corporate life.
How did you figure out the schedule that worked for you? I mean, there's a lot of consistencies, right? The morning class, the learning team meetings in the evenings, but my sense just from talking with students here on the podcast is that everybody kind of has a slightly different approach to figuring out how to make school work for them. And which makes sense. Like we all learn differently. We all, kind of manage our time differently. So how did you figure out a schedule that really worked for you?
Yeah, it was a layering process. Some of the stuff is immutable. You can't change when class times are for core. During your first 3 quarters, they are set. Learning team meetings are generally consistent. They're in the evenings, and you can work with your team to change individual ones, but those don't change that much. They're pretty set. And then the corporate events, obviously everyone at an MBA program is motivated to find an internship and then find a job. So that stuff fills in a lot of the gaps. And that's where the afternoons come in with calls with recruiters, networking, and filling in the big afternoon gap in the academic calendar. And then social life and bicycling after that. And that was where I was able to fill in everything that wasn't already taken by those first 2 things. And that's pretty much how I ordered it. It was a ranking exercise, and not every time, there were exceptions, but I think that's how I made it work. And I felt like I was able to do it all in the sense that I was able to spend time socially and riding my bike, even though I didn't put those at the top of the list.
Yeah, it's important, I think, for folks to hear about that prioritization, right? Because you do have to kind of figure out, at least this is my sense from talking with students, what's most important right now, and where should your energy be going? You can't do everything all the time. So what's your biggest priority? George, I appreciated your earlier point about the joy of learning. I think oftentimes when we talk about MBA programs, we're focusing on maybe points of stress for students. Oh, I didn't know about this, or I didn't know about that. But ideally, learning new things, being in a class again after you've worked for a while, maybe you have a different perspective on that. But being back in school, being around a really interesting group of people, ideally that's exciting to folks. It sounds like it was for you.
I would say it was a pleasant surprise. I had an idea of where I wanted to go post Darden. I had a step from here I am, then Darden, then that's where I want to go. To be totally candid, the learning was just kind of part of that, something that was just a necessary part of getting an MBA. And that's, I don't mean to diminish the academic nature of Darden because it's great. And then I came here and I find myself really enjoying class. Like I said, finance was totally new to me. I didn't actually have any of that beforehand. And then the electives I'm taking now as a second year are phenomenal. I've gone back to a lot of the professors that I had in my core curriculum because I like them so much. Finance, economics, strategy are all professors that I've gone back to and have taken more classes from them specifically because I enjoy their teaching style and their research. And learning something new is more fun than I remembered. It doesn't quite feel like undergrad where I was just kind of stuck in going to class, keep going, right? It does feel like a nice reprieve from work that I'm able to pick up something new and really understand and talk to people about it, talk to experts about it.
One of the things that we sometimes hear from students, and I think you touched upon it earlier, is as they get into these classes, all of a sudden they understand how the world works a lot more clearly, right? So these news stories that you see, whether it's a Fed update or some story about a company and some challenges that they may be experiencing, get a completely different perspective on those headlines than you did previously. It actually is interesting to me. We ask the faculty sometimes for recommendations of what students should do prior to the start of school. Oftentimes people will say, well, start reading the Wall Street Journal or similar news publication, The Economist. Some folks will even say, just pick a company and follow their stock and just see what the news related to that company is, because you're going to have quarterly earnings calls and all this kind of stuff. There's going to be reaction to that, just to get a sense of how people talk about a firm and the environment. And I always think like that experience has to look like one thing before the start of school. And then you get into school and you start learning all this stuff. You just have so much more context for what you're encountering.
It's funny you mentioned reading the news, Wall Street Journal specifically first, because that's what I did. I mean, that's your advice I received. It's a subscription that I had, and I spent a lot of time reading it. And it's the same information. It just makes a lot more sense where you understand the implications a lot better. Especially right now when everybody's concerned about the overall economy and understanding a lot of the concepts that underpin the motivations from individual actors or the companies that you read about, the Fed, and what are the implications of any course of action as we talk about Fed interest rates or earnings season and things like that. That's where finance was really helpful, but also GEM, which is the core econ class, and accounting too. I was not expecting that, but it was great to be able to understand a lot of these actual financial terms. But how do they get to these numbers? And sometimes they're a little bit, what they say is finance and accounting are a little bit divorced. And what does that mean for the markets and how people are motivated as they lead companies? all that kind of stuff feeds into a better understanding of everything that I read in these publications.
So how'd you spend your first year summer? It sounds like you had a good summer. How'd you spend it?
Yeah, I was working at a big tech company out in LA in their media and entertainment group, and that was great. I was living in Santa Monica. I was working just 10 minutes down the road, and I got to do what I wanted to do, which was work with the customers, understand what they need, what they're trying to get out of any given entertainment experience, and then work with the engineers to figure out how do we build it, what's possible, what could we build. And I had the opportunity to work with a lot of different groups when I was there. So I worked with the artist relations teams, which are the people that go out and talk to these big name artists or the representatives of these big name artists, get them in for an interview, create content that was specific to our platform. I worked with some of the product managers that were there that were overseeing what this actually looked like from a customer experience. And that was a little bit of content strategy, a little bit of tech strategy, a little bit of overall growth and how do we increase engagement. And then I worked with the engineers. And like I said before, what do we build? What can we build? How is it possible? What are the requirements? How long is it going to take? And putting together that giant puzzle for an expansion for one of our projects or one of our products. And was able to deliver something. And I thoroughly enjoyed the team. And also the entertainment industry was really interesting. That was not something that I had planned on. I did not set out to be in the entertainment industry. I was put there and it was great. I really enjoyed it. The conversations make so much sense from day one. There are some industries that are very, you can go into them and like when I was working in public services, and you would try and understand how the government buys things or what the government is like as a customer, what their approval process looks like or their financing process. It's different. It's all on its own. Working in media and entertainment was great because I show up on day one and they're like, well, we want to get this big name artist in the studio next week. And we think that the customers would enjoy this type of content. And it's so easily relatable because I could be that customer. You could be that customer. Everybody's that customer. And I felt like it helped me get up to speed really quickly in those 12 weeks that I spent there because it was such a relatable experience for the customer. I mean, we all have music streaming in some way. So that part I really enjoyed. And it helps you explain to everybody else what you did too, right? It becomes a much easier translation when someone asks what you do over the summer, and you can talk about the music industry and something like that because that's something that everybody's familiar with.
Yeah, and it feels like you think about, well, competition for eyeballs, ears, all this kind of stuff. Like it's all about content these days for even streaming platforms. How do you get more engagement? An artist comes out with an album. How do you turn it into like a multimedia experience? Whether it's interviews or exclusive content, all this kind of stuff. Like it's a huge business at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a multi-sided business when we are trying to create custom content as well. So not only do you have to understand what the general consumer is looking for, what are the trends there, what do they want out of their experience? Do they want more music? Do they want more audio? Do they want more generic content? Do they want like artist specific features? Which artists? What do they talk about? And then there's an artist selling point too. Why should they be involved? What's the ROI for them? Their time is incredibly valuable. How do you actually get some of that time? How do you justify that this is a value add to them as well? And there's a whole two-sided market to the content business in which these streaming platforms play a part of, and understanding both sides, and I was working on a team that had products for both the consumer and for the artists, and that was a pretty cool spot to be. And we spent a lot of time understanding what gets people coming back. Why do we have success here, or why do we not have success with this certain set of content or this demographic? What if we have more of X, Y, and Z type artists, this genre? What'll that do? And that was exactly the kind of question I was looking for, or looking to try and answer when I wanted to move away from consulting into product management. I got to spend a lot of time doing that. And when the customer is so easily relatable, it's a ton of fun. And there are less individual relationship building efforts with like individual clients. And it's more about what do we do for this broad spectrum of people. And that's, both of which are necessary in life. The world needs professional services firms. But I enjoy working with some of the more consumer-based products that have such a broad customer base that I'm able to solve problems for.
Was your Darden experience helpful to you and the work that you were doing this summer?
Yeah. I think especially the soft skill part of it. Come into a room where you don't know anybody and you got to put an opinion forward. That's the case method, and being able to build relationships quickly with a lot of different people. And then it was pretty techy from that perspective. So some of the more technical classes at Darden, like decision analysis, data visualization and analytics, those kind of things, to understand not just how to use Tableau, but also the science that underpins a lot of that is important. So I spent a lot of time working with business intelligence analysts, people who are actually putting together these dashboards and pulling the data, and understanding some of the statistics behind that, how they're actually doing their job, was essential for me, because that was a huge part of how the team was evaluated, was the data that was pulled. How do we get more customers, increase customer engagement, all that kind of stuff. And understanding where that came from. It's probably a bunch of disparate data sets. They get pulled into a Tableau file. But that process and who's actually doing it was a huge driver for the team, because that's, like I said, that's how they were evaluated. And having that experience at Darden helped me understand the background behind it.
So you come back to Darden. It's your second year. You're taking electives, and you're also involved with club and organization leadership. One of the things that you're doing is you're president of the Darden Outdoors Club, what's called the DOC, I believe, in Darden parlance. I got this whole alphabet soup of acronyms and abbreviations to keep in mind. It's not just your classes; it's also extracurricular clubs and organizations. How did you decide that you wanted to take on a club leadership position, and what attracted you to the Outdoors Club?
I was always attracted to the Outdoors Club from day one. I didn't realize that I wanted to take on a leadership position until I got here, but it's so much of where I spend my free time: hiking and backpacking, not just cycling, and going out into the national forest and doing all that kind of stuff. And I got here and they put on a ton of great events, and I wanted to be part of it. There's some staple events that we put on every year. The first year camping trip right before orientation for the incoming first year class. The second year camping trip right after class starts is a reunion for everybody who was gone for the summer to come back and get to see each other again. We're putting on a couple different ski trips. We have a partnership with a lot of different clubs where we'll run a joint event with them. We have an event with the Latin American Student Association next weekend where we're going to have a barbecue and hike. We'll run the hikes and they'll run the barbecue. We have a weekly hiking series where we can get people outside every weekend, and people who don't necessarily have experience skiing or backpacking or whitewater rafting, and they can come and get introduced to the outdoors just through Charlottesville that way. And that was actually a lot of my summer too. A lot of those events happen very soon in my second year. So the first year camping trip happened before I even got back to Charlottesville. I was still in Los Angeles at the time. And there's some awesome people who are also officers on the Outdoors Club board. So they were able to help and get that off the ground. And we get back to Charlottesville and we have the second year camping trip immediately. That was the next weekend. So all of that planning happened over the summer as well. And how do we call campsites and collect dues and pay deposits and advertise to the incoming class? They didn't even have Darden emails yet. We have to go find the Facebook group or the group me that they belong to and advertise them to them where they are. And so that stuff came pretty heavy through the beginning of the year. We had the ski trip planned. The person who runs the ski trip is awesome, and she had that all planned in September. We have a whitewater rafting trip in September. So it all comes really fast for the Outdoors Club in July, August, September. And so we've now moved into smaller events, I would say. We're not running the massive 100-person expensive big mainstay events, but we're still doing multiple things every weekend. So for example, this Friday we're going to have a sporting clays, a shotgun shooting event with the Darden Military Association, and then a barbecue afterwards. On Friday, we are running a hike with the weekly hiking series. We're going to go to The Priest, which is a mountain right outside Charlottesville. On Saturday night, we have a different trip that's going backpacking, and they're able to go into the wilderness and spend a night out there on a Saturday night, come back on a Sunday. The week after that, we're doing that barbecue with the Latin American Student Association. So it does not end. We've got so much going on, but these events are a little bit smaller, 10 to 15 people each instead of the hundreds of the first couple events in September.
What are your goals for the club? I mean, I think about this as a club just in my own sort of layperson's understanding here of that's always got something going on to your latest points here. Lots of activities, some of these signature events that happen every single year. When you come in as the president, you try to make your mark or do something a little bit different. What's your goal for the Outdoors Club this year?
Something for everybody. It's a big aspiration. And I think we're pretty far along that path because everybody has a different level of experience in the outdoors. There are people who have never hiked before. There are people who have been skiing their entire life. There are people who've never slept a night outside. There are people that have lived outside for months at a time. So adding events that appeal to the cross-section of Darden is difficult. And that's part of the reason why we have such a broad spectrum of events is I would like to have the DOC be a doorway for people who are new to the outdoors to get introduced to an activity that they like, whether that's hiking or whitewater rafting or skiing. And for people who are experienced in those things to have opportunities to continue their favorite hobby in a place like Charlottesville that has so many great options for that. And that's why we have so many events in even one weekend. I mean, this is a particularly busy weekend, but that's why we'll have the collaboration with the Darden Military Association, we'll have a hike, and we'll have a backpacking trip. And all of those will appeal to a slightly different person who has different levels of experience, different activities that they're interested in. There's going to be overlap for sure, but the goal is to create something that appeals to everybody. The secondary goal was to have something every weekend. So far, we have. We'll see if we can do that for the whole year. And we've kept the mainstay big events, the first year camping trip, the second year camping trip, the whitewater rafting, and the ski trip. And we've added so much of the small stuff, the things that have an invite for 10 people, 15 people. We send an email a few days before, and you can go on a hike. And that kind of stuff helps fill out the calendar. And especially for big weekends where some people are already going to a football game or they're going to a conference, but not everybody does those things. What about the rest of us who didn't, for whatever reason, that weekend go to that big event? So optionality is great for students as well. So so far we've done a lot. I'm pretty proud of the work that the officers have done and all of the stuff that we've been able to pull off.
I want to come back to the point that you made about your elective choices. You may know this, George. We get a lot of questions from prospective students about electives, to do a concentration or not. How do students pick electives? And from the admissions perspective, trying to channel the student experience, we say, well, it's a little bit all over the place. But when I talk to students about this, I hear them say things like, well, that class just seemed interesting to me, or I just like that faculty member. I wanted to take another class from them, or I'd heard good things about this other faculty member. It's not necessarily the case, at least in my experience, that people are focused exclusively on, I've got to get this concentration. You may meet a student or two that's kind of motivated in that way. But how did you pick your electives, or what's been your kind of driving thoughts as you've chosen classes in your second year?
There are two main motivations. You touched on them already, professor and domain area. And I looked through the classes for the things that were tech focused. There is a class on product management. There's a class on software design. There's a machine learning or data science and business class. And all that kind of stuff is directly applicable to my career. Those are an easy add. The other part of it is professors that I really like. I'm taking economics of money and banking because I really like the professor, the strategy classes, and a private equity finance class, which was a lot of work, but I love the professor. So those are the two main areas of how I pick and how I choose. There's a lot of word of mouth that goes into that. People who have taken the elective before, my classmates or the class above me. This is great. Well, I don't know the professor. No, the professor's great. You should take it. So that part of it goes into it as well. And I do feel like I'm getting a cross section of academics in the sense that there is part of my schedule that is focused on technology and product management and software, but that's half, a little less than half of the classes I'm taking. I don't have a concentration in mind. I'm not working towards a specific minor concentration or whatever. It's much more about the individual classes of any given quarter than it is about trying to fill in some of those checkboxes.
Well, I wonder what you're excited about as you look ahead in the remaining months of your second year. Time does really fly in an MBA program. I think it's fair to say it moves very, very quickly. So what's exciting to you about what's to come for you in your second year?
Top of mind is the Darden Worldwide course. So spring break, we'll go to Vietnam. Got to select that one, which I'm really excited about. There were a ton of options: Italy, Australia, Bahrain, South Africa, and Vietnam. To me, stuck out as something that I don't know much about. It's never been, and it's a great opportunity to go, both with a bunch of friends to go to another country, and also as an academic environment, learn about what's going on in Vietnam and some of the sustainable farming and things that they're doing there to combat climate change. And that's a 10-day-ish trip. And I'm really, really excited. I spent a lot of time talking to my friends about that. And that's actually the second DWC for some of my friends. They've gone and they went at the end of last year in May, and they're still ready and happy to do another one, which makes me even more excited about it. That these are good experiences and people keep coming back to them. I would say that's the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to. And the second part of that is being in Charlottesville, being in Central Virginia, and spending as much time as I can on Skyline Drive, like you mentioned, and in the area around Charlottesville. I'll move away after graduation, and I want to spend as much time as I can understanding and visiting all of these places in Virginia. I've also spent a lot of time checking out sandwich shops the past couple of weeks. Been to Ivy Provisions, Bel Air Market, Foods of All Nations, just like in the past week, because that's what everybody talks about when they come back to Charlottesville. Oh, my favorite sandwich shop, or my favorite restaurant, or something like that. And now's the time. I got to go do those things while I'm still here.
No take it away yet in your sandwich excursion?
No. I'll add that to the list. I think Bel Air Market's my favorite so far. But there are a ton of good options in Charlottesville, especially for a town this size. There's a lot of restaurants and places to go.
I was reading through a pamphlet that had been put together for one of our upcoming admitted student days, and noted that there are more restaurants per capita in Charlottesville than in New York City, which I can believe, just based upon, to your point, the sheer number of restaurants. I mean, you mentioned 3 sandwich shops, and that's not an exhaustive list. You can actually get much deeper. There's Take It Away. There's JM Stock Provisions, which isn't per se a sandwich shop, but they do serve sandwiches from time to time. Kind of like you have to follow their Instagram account basically to know if they're going to have sandwiches there. They always look amazing. I say this as somebody who's working in Northern Virginia, just trying to keep up with what's going on in Charlottesville. I mean, it's a very deep well. We're just talking about one category of restaurants. So no shortage of places to eat when you find yourself in Charlottesville.
Yeah, those are just the ones that are within walking distance of my apartment. That's where I've started. And then exploring from there. But seriously, that's what every alumni tells me as they come back and they go to their favorite sandwich shop. Usually, I'm not that much of a foodie. I'm not too big into the restaurant scene, but I do appreciate being able to go out to so many different places here in Charlottesville. And I hadn't really yet. And this is, the second year. This is the time to go explore all those places. So I can have a conversation with everyone who has opinions about all these kind of things. But also, it's just great food.
Well, George, we asked the same last question of our guest here on the podcast, and I wonder, what piece of advice would you share with our prospective student listeners?
It's a marathon. It's something that I wish I had appreciated. That's what I would have told myself 3 years ago. There's tests and essays and admissions, and then you get here, and then there's networking and interviews, more tests, just academic in nature. And I always felt like I was one step away from like, oh, I just have to take the GMAT and then I'm done. It's a long process, but it works out. I had points throughout the whole process where I'm like, why am I doing all this work? Like, I already have a job. Why am I doing like a part-time job on top of it just to get into school and go? I'm glad I did. And I wish I'd taken a little bit more of the multi-year perspective on the work required, and maybe taken a few moments for myself and stepped away from maybe the essays at, late in the night and just went to bed. But it's worth it. And it takes a while, but there's definitely a payoff at the end.
And it's a great point to kind of manage your energy through this, because there's always something else that you're working on or that you have to look forward to. Even when you get to graduation from your MBA program, well, you're going to start a new job. You're going to be new somewhere. You're going to have to learn all kinds of new things. There's always going to be another thing and another thing. So maybe you also celebrate the journey as you go along. There's lots of achievements along the way, whether it's I finished first quarter, or I've made it through my first semester, or I got that interview that I was really hoping to, had a great networking call, whatever the case may be. You got to take those moments too.
Yeah, it's easy to be lost in the grind.
Well, George, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great talking with you, and so appreciate your coming on the podcast to talk about the Outdoors Club. I really appreciated your point about trying to offer something for everyone. I think that means a lot in a place that says, as community oriented at Darden, to allow, people to kind of get out there and, say it's not this activity, but it might be another activity to really kind of try to serve the entire student population.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So always happy to talk about the Outdoors Club.
And that was my interview with George Uehling, a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2023 and the president of the Darden Outdoors Club. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.